Hey everybody, I want to show you why I'm so excited on why we started to integrate the use of force plate technology in how we monitor athletes' performance, their progress, and actually, really importantly, their fatigue as well. So during the season, we know there's a giant pool of resources that the athletes are just kind of struggling with sometimes. And because there's just so much demand on their time, their energy, and with practice, of course, it's going to happen, but practice and game schedule and training and travel and school and personal lives, all kinds of stuff can really pile up onto the athlete. And before using force plate technology, we're using very rudimentary ways to monitor fatigue. And I think that with the uh, the intention of using force plates, we can just see a much clearer picture. So just for context, how we used to measure that, we would have the athlete jump as high as they can in a counter movement jump. So hands on your hips and you just drop down and jump as high as you can. And we would just measure how high they were jumping. Now, what we really found was that some athletes were just really good at hiding fatigue. But the use of force plates, because it takes 1,000 measurements every second of over 80 different metrics, well, the athlete can't really hide that performance because we can see how they're performing the task and the strategies that they're using and changing to try to get maybe a better result even when they fatigue. So I'm going to go through some of those metrics. I'm not going to go through all 80 of them or 80 plus. We're just going to go through a few of them to give you a really good idea and hopefully a better understanding on really the kind of information we can provide coaches and training staff. And I think the real important layer when it comes to the training staff is because we can report differences from left to right, we can see those deviations. And if they do have any major changes, then we can provide that information to the training staff and they can maybe get hold of that athlete and go through a further investigation on why there's this maybe a bigger change when it comes to biases towards jumping or landing left or right. So we're going to go through a few of the metrics that I think is important, and we're going to touch on some of those and just kind of show you just how powerful some of this can be for you coaches and the training staff out there. So just by using the same counter movement jump on, hands are on your hips, you drop down and jump as high as you can. We're going to see the strategies that the athlete uses. So the first part here is the unweighting phase, and this is in seconds. So the amount of time the athlete takes dropping down into their jump. So you see the athlete with their hands on their hips and they boom, drop down really fast to try to put the brakes on to jump as high as they can. Well, this is the amount of time it takes for the athlete to start and from the drop right down to when they reach basically zero. So when they get to the bottom of their drop, this is how long it takes. So for this athlete, on average, on April 26th, it took the athlete 0.33 seconds to get from start to finish of that unweighting phase, so that drop. Then we see on May 6th that it only took them 0.299, excuse me, 0.29. So much quicker on average. So that's a great start to see that the athlete, okay, is not really going to, there's not a big difference in their fatigue on this part. So the reason why this is so important is because, sure, the athlete might be able to jump as high, but did they take more time? Because when you're tired and you're trying to generate the same amount of force, it's going to probably take you more time to be able to do that. So if the athlete's taking less time to generate that kind of force, then we know that there's a good chance they're probably not fatigued. So it's a good sign to start. The next one we're going to look at force on a couple of different ends. Excuse me. The first one that we're going to look at is the amount of force that the athletes are generating when they're at the bottom of their jump. So when they drop down and they get to the bottom of their jump, how much force are they creating? So we see here that the athlete is generating 1,497 newtons. Now, if we think about that in kilograms, I'm just going to take out my calculator here. So 1,497 divided by 9.81 from newtons to kilograms. So this athlete on average was generating 152.6 kilograms of force at the bottom of their jump. So when they're dropping down, when they're at the lowest point, they're generating about 152 kilograms of force. That was on the April 26th. And then on May 6th, we see that, come on, my calculator, is 1455 divided by 9.81. They were generating 148 kilograms of force. So if we take what they were generating to what they are generating, there's a change of about 4 kilos of force. So not a gigantic change, but still a bit of a drop. And that might have something to do with the change in displacement, because they didn't drop down as far, might make up for that loss in displacement at the bottom. So this would tell us that we should probably dig in a little bit further. And we're going to look at the most amount of force now that the athlete's able to generate when they're going from the bottom to the top. So right after they slammed on the brakes, how much force they're able to put out at maximum at any point throughout that jump. And we see on April 26th that they're putting out, on average, 2,584 watts. And we see here that it went up to 2,688. So went up by about 100 watts. So again, that's sort of pointing me in the direction that the athlete is probably not fatigued. So not really much for cause for concern. So far, they've got great ability to output more power. So if you're tired, you're probably not going to output more force than when you're fresh. And same here, just with the force at minimum displacement, a little bit lower, but not a big change. So I wasn't overly concerned when I first seen this. So we see the athlete is able to put out more force. We see that they're taking less time to create that force. That tells me that the athlete so far is showing good sign that they're probably not very fatigued. Reactive strength index is a really cool measure, I think, on just how reactive an athlete can be. So taking into account their jump height and how fast that they're able to do it, we can see that the athlete is able to produce. So right here, their average is 0.34, and they're producing a little bit faster results at 0.38. And that kind of makes sense with the power that we've seen. So this is going to tie in quite often to the peak propulsive power. So one that I really want to touch on is here, the left and right biasing on when it comes to their braking rate of force development. So how quickly they're able to put the brakes on from left to right. So this was a pretty big change, and it's something for us to dig in a little bit deeper with. We've seen on the 26th, the athlete on average had a 9.96, also just about a 10% difference from left to right. So that would be something that we should check on, because anything around 10%, we just want to make sure that the athlete, there's no injury, there's no issue with maybe their mechanics. So we'd have to take a look at that. And every athlete is going to have a different bias when it comes to left and right. Every sport can have a much different bias. So it's not just getting this number so it's perfect, so they're perfectly producing as much force left and right. What's important to note is if there's a change from when the athlete started. So what we see here on the 26th, on average, they're producing 9.96. Now, if we take a look here, we see that the athlete is producing minus 358. So they went the other way to, on average, 3.58. So you see that closer to zero. If we didn't really dig much further, you would say, oh, well, wow, the athlete's producing a lot more equal force. But then we start digging a little bit further, and we can see that the session max was 0.36. So they were able to generate like almost identical force at best, but at worst, they were almost 20% difference. So 18% difference on how much force was being produced left or right. So was that a one-off, or what did that really look like? So this for sure would be information that we would take a look at, and we would send that information to the training staff and medical staff to say, hey, so-and-so has a big change when it comes to left and right deviations on how fast they're putting on the brakes. It might be something to look at. Now, some colleagues have done this with teams and seen that it actually got the athlete. There was an issue with the athlete, so they were able to get the athlete into recovery, get it taken care of, and get them back into the game, instead of just letting that issue linger and probably affect them to a much greater degree later on. So again, this is a perfect example of, sure, the athlete looks like, there's not much fatigue here. They're doing it faster. They have almost the same amount of force. They're very close here. At the bottom of their jump, they're producing more force. Their reactive strength index is going up. So again, that's another good sign. And this is very similar to this, just measured in a different way. So all of those signs pointed to the athlete really not being fatigued, but we see a giant change in left to right braking, our rate of force development, so how fast they're putting on the brake. So sure, the athlete might not be fatigued, but there's more digging that we should probably do. So this is where I would send the information to the training staff, not just with the number, but I would also take a peek at the performance at the jumps that we did do and compare one series of them versus the other, and give us a really good opportunity to see really what changed, and for the training staff to have a conversation with that athlete and investigate it further. So I hope this helps. I think it's really extremely valuable information, not just on the performance side, but of course on the fatigue side as well. Now, we can have all kinds of, and we have all kinds of different reports and everything that we have available. Some I'm going to be going through more and more as we go. So very, very exciting stuff. And for me to be able to better assist you coaches and training staff out there on getting athletes to play more often, because really that's honestly my goal, getting them to play more often, and then of course get them to play at a higher level. So this is a big part of the process, and force plates can be a gigantic move towards the right direction in giving you the firepower you need to make just more informed choices as a coach and training staff. So very exciting stuff. If you have any questions on this, don't be afraid to shoot them down below or send me a DM, and I'll be happy to answer them, and maybe how we can help you or your team, even just you individuals out there, on how we can test some of this stuff for you. So any questions, fire away. We're super excited about all of this, and just really what it can mean for everybody. So that is it. I'm out.